Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spilling the Green Beans, my live gardening show. And today I want to chat with you about urban gardening and sustainability, just to give you an idea how important it can be, not only for you and your personal well-being and health, etc., where I've been talking about so much, but also for your environment and actually for the climate. So let's dive in a little bit. Urban gardening, first of all, it's not so new as many people think. Actually, urban gardening used to be kind of like the norm. We used to live in urban settlements. You can name it that. And people have actually always been growing at least part of their own food until, of course, in the 20th century, so as of the 1900s, cities around the world started to kind of like explode. And that trend actually hasn't stopped yet at all. Many more people will live in cities, or at least urban, like really urbanized settlements. Towards 2050, the expectation is actually that kind of like 60 to 70% of the global population will live in cities. So cities are on the rise. They become bigger and bigger. There become more and more of them. And we also know that with cities, we have a few environmental challenges, let's put it that way. And part of that is because of the disconnect between the city and the land that actually provides them with one of the most essential things, food. So there is this kind of like disconnect. There is also, we grew to believe that when you buy your food, that you kind of like cover the costs of that food. Well, that's not the case. And by now we actually know, because like especially environmental costs, but also a lot of social costs aren't covered by the price we pay in town or in the cities. So this disconnect can be balanced back in favor of the environment and climate, against the climate change that is happening by you, me, and everybody else living in town. Well, of course, first of all, you can let your money talk. So kind of like try to skip as much as possible non-organic vegetables or products in general if you do your grocery shopping in a supermarket or a big mall or whatever. Try to do your shopping not by car. That's kind of like, I mean, on the one hand, it's tricky because of course sometimes you need more heavy stuff, which is difficult to transport in a different way than by car. But on the other hand, you also live in town. So often locations where you can go shopping aren't that far away or relatively easy reachable by on foot, or maybe by bike or by a public transport. So try to think about that. But besides that, I want to discuss a little bit more what urban gardening can do in a broader, like in a wider impact range than you shopping your vegetables in a sustainable way, or you growing your vegetables. I want to look at you growing your vegetables, having your easy urban garden, and what does that do on a wider scale, and why is it important that you do it or that you start doing it. So urban gardening is sustainable in a lot of different ways, in way more ways than we often think about. Because first of all, it has a very positive impact on waste control. First, of course, you don't need as much food packaging anymore. as before. So if we all do it, a lot of food packaging will disappear because it's not sold in that way anymore. You have organic waste accounts actually for 20% of the total waste that households produce. So if you are urban gardening, I don't know if you started already, you might have noticed, I noticed for sure that I actually have a lot less organic waste. First of all, because I don't need to buy bigger portions than we can actually eat as a household. That's one of the big disadvantages of buying your vegetables but also fruits in a supermarket, which we all do because we live in town. But often the packaged portions are just too big. So it's easier to avoid a lot of food waste if you have that lettuce in your garden and you just pick the leaves that you need, instead of having to buy the whole head, which you know you're not going to eat, but it's the only way to buy it. So that is actually good. And it also made me also, I mean, it's something that is, I mean, it's proven by research, you hear it from everybody, but for me as well, I noticed it as well. It made me a lot more aware of the waste that I produce, also the non-organic waste, because of course the food is packaged often and totally irrational, and I mean, I can go on a total rant about this, so I won't do it, but the organic vegetables are even more often packed in plastic than the non-organic ones. I mean, don't let me go there, but yeah, you reduce your waste and you become a lot more aware of the amount of waste that you actually produce. Then if we have more green space in town, it helps with the microclimate, or actually even temperature control. So it will increase humidity. It lowers temperatures because, you know, the more green we have, the more kind of like temperature gets absorbed. The warmth of the sun gets absorbed instead of radiated back into the atmosphere with all the black with all the concrete and the tarmac and everything. So greens, and it's not only trees. You don't have to think only about big trees. Greens in general, they capture dust and gases and all sorts of pollution that's in the air. So that's really good. And it also is, it helps break wind. And again, you don't have to think about trees and shrubs and things. If you have a trellis with your big zucchini and your runner beans and tomatoes in summer, you have a windbreaker as well. So that's it can create shadow. As soon as something is a little bit bigger, it creates shadow. And again, that also helps kind of like control the extreme temperatures that we nowadays have so often in town. Then it helps with water management. So the more green you have, the more kind of like natural prevention, or actually natural absorption of water you have, and that of course helps against flooding. It also helps, or actually it kind of like has a different kind of system, of course, of recycling water. So not everything just goes immediately into the sewers. It filters it through the soil, which is way more sustainable than, of course, putting everything, also the good water, into the sewers. And yourself, you also will notice that you will manage water differently. I mean, I teach you always that you need to have a big bucket on your terrace or on your balcony to capture rainwater and use that to water your plants. It's absolutely total waste of water if you water with tap water. So, and that also gives you an idea about, okay, how does it work with water? I mean, and it creates kind of like awareness about what is really happening in our climate and how can you help preventing it, and how can you help make your own little environment better and greener. Because that bucket on your terrace, it controls the humidity in your direct surroundings as well a little bit, because of course it vaporizes during the day. So even in the burning sun of the heat in summer, the humidity on your terrace or on your balcony in your urban garden will be different from the humidity when you go into your neighborhood and stand on an empty square. So that is also a reason. And that's not only the garden itself and the plants, of course, but also that big bucket, that big 30-liter bucket or something, whatever you can, or 10-liter one, whatever you can place on your balcony, do it. It's really a good little thing you can do, but it really improves the quality of life in your direct neighborhood. And then small scale gardening, what we all do when we do urban gardening, is way more diverse than, of course, the big scale, normal industrialized agriculture that we know from the fields. But even if if it's a mixed farming in the rural areas, they tend to have bigger plots with only one type of vegetable or plant or whatever. And the small scale gardening that we do is super diverse, which increases the biodiversity in your neighborhood. It's good for the bees, the birds, the butterflies. It's just an incredible support to lifting the biodiversity in town. And the final thing that I want to talk about today, when it comes to easy urban gardening or urban gardening in general, and sustainability, is that it balances it manages the balance between O2 and CO2. And that is, first of all, because you bring the place of production and the place of consumption so much closer that you lower the amount of food kilometers that you consume hugely, absolutely hugely. And of course, you can't grow everything. I mean, I myself can't do it either. And I have my little sin because I love avocados. And I know that's kind of like a tricky one, but I'm totally glad because I found an organization, it's called crowd farming. And that makes that my avocados now come from an organic farm, young farmers in southern Spain. So at least they're from Europe. And I reduced the food kilometers that I consume with my little sin of avocados immensely. Because of course now my avocados don't come from Southern America anymore while I'm living in Europe. So at least I have my avocados from Europe, and I do that with almost all the more kind of like tropical fruits and products that I love and don't really want to take out of my diet, but at least I want to do it consciously. And I found this organization. It's really amazing, and it is also a direct connection between me as a consumer and them as the farmer. So the farmer, I pay actually almost always, I pay kind of like the same price as I would pay in the supermarket. But that price goes directly to the farmers. So they actually earn more money from the money that I spent anyways. So I just love them. Crowd farming. Go and look whether you can find find yourself in their mission and their products. But I love them. But another one is plants capture CO2. And we all know CO2 is a bad thing in our climate. And the most CO2 is captured by a plant in its growing stage. I repeat that. Let that sink in. in the stage where the plant grows from seedling to mature plant is the period of its life where it does capture most CO2. Our gardens are kind of like in a constant mode of growing. So we have gardens that are perfectly designed for capturing as much CO2 as our little plot can capture, because it is constantly growing. As soon as it's matured and finished growing, we take it out and we put something new in that is growing again. So we keep our garden kind of like on the edge of its toes all the time when it comes to capturing CO2. So actually our garden, if you compare the amount of CO2 by the square meter, it captures actually by the most CO2 possible, way more than the big trees that might be in the park down your street, if you're lucky enough to have a park around the corner. But yeah, so that is another one. So it really, really helps balancing out the balance between O2 and CO2. And I think that is an amazing, amazing thing. So that about urban gardening and sustainability for today. It helps managing waste, reduces waste, it reduces the temperature, it improves the microclimate of your own neighborhood. It manages water and it actually reduces your water consumption. It improves the biodiversity and it improves the air quality, also on an O2 CO2 balance level. So I think those are 5 incredibly good reasons to start urban gardening. And as it is the end of January now, the season for the Northern Hemisphere is really, really around the corner. So keep an eye on my social media platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Because I'm going to do a planning workshop, it's going to be free. So I'm going to talk you through how to plan your garden to make sure that you actually grow what you eat, which I think is very important. And I will be back with spilling the green beans. And then I'm going to talk about easy urban gardening and health. So that's for the next episode. And until then, I love to hear from you in the comments or on my Instagram or in a message or on Facebook. And of course, don't forget, if you're not in my Facebook group yet, find our garden party on Facebook. That's my group and it's a lovely community and it would be great to see you there. I see you next time. Bye-bye.